And we're off. Welcome to F1000. I'm Chaps. I am here with Mike. Mike, don't say anything yet. It's the British Grand Prix weekend. We've had back to back weeks of some audio issues. I think we figured it out. I'm hoping someone's here to let us know. Mike, say something for us. Say something.
Can you hear me? Well,
I
can
can
you
hear
hear me?
you.
Okay. That's a really good start. The fact that you can hear me is really good.
We've got a
Okay.
couple people here in the YouTube. Can anyone let us know? Do you hear Mike before we get off and running? Because we've
Testing.
got a lot to talk
Yeah.
about today. It's a mixed up grid,
Oh my God.
and we got to make sure that everyone can hear Mike and his great points. And I'm going to assume that it's
Testing,
working.
testing, testing. Yeah, nobody's saying it's not working, which is probably a good thing, right?
That's new. Yeah.
Okay. Hey.
Well, let's jump into it, Mike, because I'm going to assume that I figured it out. I clicked the right button this week.
Little boy.
We got confirmation. We can hear you. Okay. Woo! Woo! Listen, there's no guarantees in gambling, especially gambling on motorsports. We saw that last weekend. We were very right. And then out of nowhere, well, not wrong, but poor luck, let's call it. Let me
Devastated.
just say
Yeah.
this, though. I think it's worth something that we've been going live everywhere for the past 2 weeks. We've had audio issues for the past 2 weeks, and we've lost money the past 2 weeks. And today, no audio issues. So there's no guarantees, but let's just put that there.
I like that.
Good
That's a
juju.
good trend.
Good juju.
That's a great trend. Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, Mike, let's jump into it. We've got a mixed up three Brits at the top. Now, I say it's mixed up because Verstappen took floor damage. So he starts, what is he, P4? But not because of pace, because of damage. And when we started this show, if you've been here for a few years, you've heard me say this all over and over. This is the type of weekend that we look for where the best driver in the best car has extenuating circumstances in qualifying that puts them out of position. And hopefully we can find some value on what that gives us in terms of opportunities.
I think there's definitely beyond even Max. I think there's a lot of it's odd that we just went from the Austrian GP where we had the sprint and things looked kind of nailed down in terms of after qualifying who was going to finish where, and we had to extract. We worked so hard, which is a shame because it didn't work out for us, but we worked so hard to find those props and picks that we made last week. And we were settling on like finishing position bets, and they were short bets, minus money bets. We were struggling to get value out of the book. And I think this week, man, I think it's all coming back to us right now. I'm looking through. I see a lot. I'm interested in a lot of things. I honestly think that we need to go through like every prop. So this might be a little bit longer of a show, but we actually could. We might be best served by going through every prop because every page that I look at, I see something that I'm interested in that I want to talk to you about.
Okay, well,
So
I agree. There's a
yeah,
lot to talk about.
yeah.
I don't think I had. I mean, we were texting last night. You said you had something like 29 leans. I have a couple that stood out to me, but why don't I let
Perfect.
you do this? Do you have out of that list of 29? Do you have somewhere you want to start? Do you have somewhere you want to take
Okay,
me?
maybe we'll start with just some basic concepts about how we think the race is going to play out because I think that'll inform, at least for me, which leans we should be moving toward. So you mentioned qualifying, and obviously there was like a huge impacts that happened in qualifying that I think will ultimately have an impact on this race and the value that you can get right now. So one of the things that immediately stood out to me yesterday was just look. Listen, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert on the cars, but to me it looked like if you were evaluating the wing levels on the Mercedes and McLaren and the Red Bull had what looked like the biggest wing, so it was taking the most downforce. It seemed that way. The McLarens were probably in the middle. I think they had like that triple beam, and they had. I was reading an article for I think it was maybe Mark, could have been one of Mark Hughes' article, but he was saying that they had taken slightly more downforce too. It looked like based on I think it was the GPS tracing, and that might have been Mark Hughes, my guy again, saying it as well, that Lewis had a little bit more wing than George, and George was running the lowest drag type of setup in
Hmm.
qualifying.
George had a really high top speed too.
Yeah. So if you want to rank the top five from a downforce perspective, it looks like the guy who's on pole had the least downforce, and then Hamilton maybe the second least, then possibly the McLarens, and then Max. And I think
The only thing I might disagree with is the McLaren seemed to be dominant in sector 2, which was the kind of. Does that mean that like that's where Meggetts and Beckett's is? Does that mean they have more downforce than maybe the
I
Mercs
think
did?
again, I'm still wrapping my head around this, but my understanding is that section now has become more of like a lower drag just because of the mechanical grip that these cars have.
Right.
It's become more of a lower drag circuit in general, and it's more the technical parts of the track where the downforce is actually most usable. It seems like so, and I think they were quite quick through the slower speed technical section. That was my understanding at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the top five and you think about the conditions that we're going to get today, very likely that I think the track is soaked right now. That's my understanding, or that it's going to get wet in the next hour,
Okay.
and that there's a possibility of rain at some point over the course of the race.
It's going to be a changing track. If it's starting wet, whether it
Yeah.
rains or not through the race, we've got changing conditions.
Yeah. And Lando kind of was alluding to that yesterday. I think he had acknowledged that his setup was a little bit more geared toward higher downforce. And George, pretty well, he gave an interview after qualifying, and he essentially admitted that he got kind of lucky that he got on pole. He was saying that there was a massive headwind into a couple of the turns that provided him with that extra grip and downforce that he needed to squeeze out those extra tenths, it looked like, on his qualifying lap. Lando abandoned his final flying lap. Oscar abandoned his final. Well, he got stuck in traffic. He couldn't get the tires warmed up properly. Max had the damage.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like Lewis himself was a little bit off of George, but he wouldn't have benefited from the same conditions the same way that George did with that lower drag setup. So it seems like, again, George Russell, by virtue of a little bit of luck and a good setup choice in qualifying, was able to put it on pole, which is great for him. Really great call. But do we think that he's ultimately going to be finishing this race in first place? Is he going to be finishing this race on the podium in a race that's going to be a one-stopper, but will be, as Toto Wolff said yesterday, probably decided based on tire management and deg and changing conditions?
Let me give you my high level where I'm at with those top 5. The 2 Mercs, the 2 McLarens, and Verstappen. I think it's going to be very difficult to pick and handicap between the Mercs and the McLarens. The linchpin in this conversation for me is, does Max go through? Now, the odds are suggesting, if you look at the lines and infer what they're meaning, that Verstappen gets the Mercs. Vegas has it that McLaren maybe wins this race. It's kind of a toss-up between Max and Lando. If we think Max gets through, I think there's ways that we can avoid picking between the Mercedes and the McLarens. And I just, to me, that seems like a very difficult choice this week. But I'm interested, do you think that Max, without damage, is still just the fastest car and going to go win this race?
I would argue that, and I think odds makers see it the same way, it's like a crapshoot between Lando and Max, right? Okay. So, I don't think that I can make a decision. I don't think it's a McLaren and Mercedes issue. I think it's a Lando versus Max issue.
So do you see them fighting ahead of the Mercs?
Who's going to win? 100%. Yeah.
Because I found this, let's get into a line. I found this very interesting. We are now in a categorically different era in Formula One.
Yeah.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
This is the one I like, without Lando.
Without Lando Norris. 2 years, Mike. This has been without Max Verstappen. And now we've
got the best
without Lando Norris. And you can get Max. Yeah. Okay, so this was even money last night. We've lost a little value throughout the night. At minus 105 for Max. And this, I was trying to think what happens where it's not just Max versus the Mercedes. I think this is what it shakes down to.
I think it's going to be Max versus Lando in the end.
Right. But
this is a bet that allows you to have, 100%.
So at Max at minus 105 effectively is the same thing as saying Red Bull versus Mercedes. Who's going to finish the highest? Red Bull versus Mercedes minus 175. So you got 70 points in your favor there. I'm not sure what happens where if Lando wins, then we take Lando out. This is all just, does Max go and finish ahead of the 2 Mercs at minus 105? This is
like the points of value here. I mean, obviously this bet is just, you're not taking into account the rest of the field, but the without Lando Norris is taking into account the rest of the field. That's, I think, the 70-point discrepancy. I would argue that you're right, though. That's not, it looks like it's pretty bang on unless something crazy happens. It's going to be these 3 constructors at the top forget about the rest of the field. I would rather take the minus 105. It makes total sense completely.
And I don't think Piastri beats Verstappen. He starts behind him. I also don't think he has the same
No.
type of racecraft. So if this is shaking down to we both think, I still think it's tough to peg McLaren versus Mercedes. But if we can take Lando out of that equation and say Max is going through the Mercs, I think minus 105 is a pretty good value on him. And again, it's a new category. We're not this usually isn't here.
And I think that just the fact that that category exists is an acknowledgement that Lando Norris looks like he's the favorite, even though he's not the. It doesn't look like he's the betting favorite. I think they're both at plus 200 right now.
They were even, right?
Which makes sense. I understand that, right? They're both even.
So let's take one of those out and take the other guy.
100%. I would rather do that than try to pick between the two of them at this point.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
So you do, but you do see it though. Yeah. So then, what you're acknowledging then is that you think it's completely possible that because you just talked about Piastri and he does present a bit of a risk theoretically, but I think this is an acknowledgement that the Mercs are going to probably go backwards if we've got those two first and second place filled by Max and Lando, and that's what the bookmakers are suggesting too. Then what happens to the Mercedes? And is there something that we want to look at with that? Is there a combination podium finish that we want to look at? Are there fades on podium finishing position? Do we want to look through those right now to see if there's anything that we would consider taking?
Well,
and I will caveat up by saying, okay, well let me start with this. I mentioned before that it looked like, based on the GPS tracing, that Lewis had taken more wing and more downforce than George. Theoretically, over the course of the 50 or so, how many laps it is, I think it's 56 or something, I don't know. That's going to benefit Lewis from a tire management perspective and probably help him better deal with the changing conditions versus George. So you might want to look at that matchup. Lewis starting right behind George. Can you get plus money on Lewis? Is it possible that at some point during the race he's in front of his teammate? This is the British Grand Prix too. This is where, how many times has Lewis won here? 8 times at Silverstone or something like that?
I'm going to be honest with you,
Plus
Mike.
125?
It's tough for me to find something on Merc, mainly because they're a little unknown. They're new to the scene at the top of the grid. They've been here a few weeks in a row, but they still seem to be surprised every time they're there. And I think that their performance in qualifying was more to do with the changing conditions than it is like on race pace on just a normal one-stop dry day. And I don't know. I mean, the weather. It's Britain. Who knows what the weather's going to be? To pick between them, I'm having a hard time. I started at the start of the show saying handicapping between Mercedes and McLaren. I'm having a hard time pegging just Mercedes this week. I didn't expect them to be on pole and 1-2, no less.
No. But I think that we understand now, once you digest what happened yesterday, why they ended up on pole. Right? It was a bunch of different factors that influenced it. I think also that there is because of what happened in Canada and because of how they qualified here, there's a bit of a misnomer that makes it seem like they're better than Red Bull and McLaren in the changing conditions. I don't think that's true. I think it's a matter of circumstance in both of those occasions, qualifying at Montreal and qualifying here, where ultimately the setups of both the McLarens and the Red Bulls being higher downforce, they still probably could have out-qualified with the higher downforce configuration if it weren't for those circumstances, Max taking the damage, Lando having to abandon his final Q3. Like, they're still better cars. They're just better cars. They're faster cars. They can take more downforce and still be faster.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it's worth saying that in Q1 and Q2, anytime, and even the first laps in Q3, anytime everyone was starting to set a new time, times were improving, everyone went out. It was the McLarens that just ended up at the top of the list, except for the one lap where it counted, where Oscar, they put him out into traffic, and Lando had a moment and then abandoned because he wasn't finding time. So,
the McLarens are going to finish ahead, I think. I'm looking at Piat. We can talk about Piastri, but I think the McLarens are finishing ahead of the Mercedes here. And the only reason I was looking at Lewis Hamilton in particular was because of the fact that it looks like his setup is with higher downforce package.
And that's generally how they split themselves. George has typically gone more for a qualifying setup, and Lewis has gone more for a race setup.
This is a high tire stress track. I know that it's a one-stopper, but if George ends up in traffic because he gets jumped at some point in the first 10, 15 laps and he's battling to get those positions back, even though he said that he wasn't going to go crazy like he did in Montreal. He's going to kill his tires. And Lewis is going to be A, in a car that is better set up to manage his tires, and B, just inherently has that skill that George doesn't. That's why I'm saying it might make sense to take a look at him. But we don't have, there's a million other things to look at. We don't have to take.
I'm not going to put it on the star list right now.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I'm not going to put it on the star list. Can I take you somewhere? Because I think I'm going to have a hard time focusing on Mercedes until we look at these other things. Because there's options that I liked that avoided the top. And I love this Max without Lando. I think that's a great way to capitalize what happens in the top 5. But I'd like to go to the groups, Mike. Because there's 3 here that stood out to me. And it avoids the top 5.
Okay, perfect.
So group 1, like I said, I don't want to pick. I mean, yeah, we don't want to pick. Group 2, I love Carlos Sainz.
I have that double starred here.
Minus
is this guy not just gonna? Is he not just driving in? Yeah, so he's just gonna finish in 6, P6, right? Like, is that not what's gonna happen?
Right, because he's got Leclerc's all the way down in 11th. We gotta mention they're on split concepts right now. Ferrari's a little lost. They've reverted on Carlos's car to a what did you say it was?
Imola. It was the Imola spec, I think. Yeah.
So they're like, hey, we were working back in Imola. Why don't you try that? We'll do an A/B split test. Carlos is the one that's performing this weekend. So I don't know. Did their upgrades suck? I don't know. But Leclerc hasn't been on it. Leclerc is potentially in a car that's the wrong concept. I feel very comfortable that Sainz stays ahead of Leclerc. And then we've got the 2 Astons that they're not going to beat a Ferrari.
No. I like the Aston Martin this weekend. By the way, I think there's actually something that we could look at for Aston Martin a little later on. But if we can't find anything else, but I do. This is like screaming value. This is not. First of all, if you look at we were just on the matchup page before, and I think Carlos was like minus 250 against his teammate. So you get this. This is essentially because I don't think Aston Martin is in the same league. You take the 2 other cars.
225
and his teammate in a group. 225 minus 225 there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you add
so the irrelevant 2
cars just to gain that extra value on the teammate bet.
Really, like the only way that Alonso and Stroll are winning this group is if something happens to Carlos Sainz, but you lose the bet anyway, right? So
I'm putting a star.
Yeah, I really do like that one.
Sainz group 2.
Listen, like Ferrari is lost without a doubt, but the fact that he's running the older spec, a spec that they've won races with. To some degree, obviously, like they won the Monaco Grand Prix with the spec, is a positive for me. And they're falling out of contention with the top 3 teams, but they're still an extremely fast car, especially when compared to the rest of the field. So this is essentially just a Ferrari versus Aston Martin bet, which you can't get. You can't go to the race match bets page and see Ferrari v Aston Martin. You'd never get that. It would be like minus 500, right?
Yeah,
that's what this is.
Okay, I've got it started. Let's stay right here, Mike, because I liked something in Group 3 too.
Oh, do you? Okay, who do you like?
Alex Albon. Now the value's not
I like
the
Albon
same.
Too. Yeah,
Albon starts in the points. His post quali said points is like we can get points here. We're going well this weekend. We feel good.
Yep.
He starts in 9th. Now who else is in his group? Logan. Is Logan a concern? No.
Logan's not a concern. And he's the closest one to him, I think.
Esteban Ocon. Yeah, Logan's 12. Ocon's all the way down in 18th. And Tsunoda's so Yuki. So this probably shakes down to Yuki versus Alex, maybe for like P10 in the race. Or P11, but we don't have to pick the points. I like the group.
I like the group. The V-Carb is just not good in high-speed corners. So, and not that the Williams is amazing, but it looks like it's good enough to. And they remember last year where Albon was like leading. Didn't he like lead a practice here because they got a good headwind? They've performed well at Silverstone for whatever reason, and even though the car is actually quite different than I think they had last year, it seems like for whatever reason they show up here and they seem to perform quite well. I do like this. I think Albon at minus 200 is really good value, just given the differences in grid position. A.
So that's the thing. Like Ocon, I think is the biggest threat. He's down in 18th.
He's not a threat. He really isn't though. He's not a threat in 18th.
No. And the thing with Williams still has its limitations, but it seems to be more consistent where it has an opportunity to perform. It's performing. Like this isn't the Williams of a couple years ago.
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest risk at minus 200, this is like a will he classify bet. That's what this seems like to me. So
Yeah.
if you go to Will Williams classify, it's probably minus 350 or something like that, and you can get it for minus 200.
Can you get exact drivers to be classified? Or is it
Oh, actually,
only
that's a
like
good
a
point.
team?
It might just be team. I can't quite remember. I think it's like you can either choose one or two. No, you probably could.
Well, let's just see. Well, this won't give us the Alex specific, but well, Williams all
No.
the way down. Are they no?
Yeah, minus 334 that both of the cars are gonna come in. There
Yeah,
you go.
they're
It's like
well,
it's
Sauber.
yeah,
Sauber has the
yeah.
worst odds.
That makes sense too. Yeah, that makes sense too. Right?
So the only thing that I
I
don't
do
love
like I
about
do
it
like
is
it
it's
though.
minus 200, but it's in our window. It's on the edge of our
It's in our
window.
window. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna add it to the start. And then while I'm doing
Yeah.
this, Mike, I mean, group
Do you
3 or
do you want
group
to talk about
4,
my guy?
group
Do you
4.
want to talk about my guy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it is your guy that
right.
I was looking at, Kevin
It
Magnussen.
it is my guy. I know, and he's only down there because of what happened in the change of conditions in Q1. Like look how quick Hulk. So okay, first things first. He doesn't have the same spec as Hulkenberg. That the upgrades that they brought, I think they took off Kevin's car because he just didn't feel comfortable with them. That doesn't mean that the Haas isn't good around here. It actually looks quite planted actually for a midfield team. So he's only out in Q1 because of the fact that he essentially just slid off the track, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had to abandon his lap, but I think going into what was it? Might have been turn one. I can't even remember exactly when it happened, but
The Haas is quick. The
the Haas
Haas
is
is
quick.
quick.
It is. Yep.
A week and a half ago, we had a
It's
chance at 3-1 odds for them to be better than the Alpine.
shut up.
And
We're not getting into that.
it's like minus 300 now.
No, I don't. That's you let that play out over the course of the season, and I think Alpine's going to come back at them. But in this particular category, who is the other threat? Like so, Danny out qualified Kevin Magnussen, but we talked about why. I think K Mag would have been in Q2 at the very least had he not had the issues in Q1.
Mm-hmm. Danny starts ahead.
He's starting
of Kevin.
17. Danny starts in 15. But like we talked about, all of this high speed stuff, like I don't really know how the V carb is going to be able to hold on to that P15.
No, oddly, I think the biggest threat is Gasly, but he starts from the pit lane. So
He's starting P19, right?
Oh, I guess because he went into the pit lane before Checo.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
gets
So Checo's behind him. Checo's behind him. Yeah.
Now, in reality, when you start from the pit lane, I'm trying to picture the last time it happened.
He's on the grid. Yeah, he's on the grid, and Checo's in the pit lane because he broke park for a minute.
Oh, Gasly's just P20 on the grid.
He's on the grid. Yeah, he just takes a grid penalty. He
starts back in like turn 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, so he is on the grid and he's right there. Oddly, I think he could be the biggest risk here. I don't think I want to bet on the Alpine. I don't know if that makes us move away from him. But I like the Haas. The Haas is quick, and this is
as
a battle
as a plus money bet.
again.
Yeah, as a plus money bet, I would write it down, and I don't feel the same way about that as I do the other three bets. But if we start looking at the slip in the end and say maybe we need to find some value here to boost the payout, then I would be interested in looking at that because I think Kevin Magnussen is. Yeah, I would say so. I like it.
And go maybe.
I'm willing, man. We have to keep going here because I'm willing to take. I'll swing a little bit here for the fences if there's a few that we really think we can capitalize on.
Those were the three that I just wanted to get off my chest because I keep coming back to them if we kept trying to pick where's the Merc going to go. And I just thought that there was value where we avoided the top, where it's mixed, and Max is just going to go through both of them.
If we could find finishing position for Carlos Sainz to finish P6, it doesn't exist. I would 100% take that. No, it doesn't exist? I don't think they. No, they don't. It doesn't.
Let's let the people see that it doesn't exist.
Sure.
So you're not gatekeeping a great line on everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's nowhere else he would finish.
No, I know.
Is there anywhere?
Seems
Oscar,
pretty
Oscar
obvious.
And then we get into like this could be Red Bull, Merc, McLaren. This could be McLaren.
The top five. I don't know what happens in the top five. To be honest, I don't. Well, I do. Okay, so I do know. I do think that George is not on the podium. Do you want to take a look? I have a couple of. There's a combination podium finish. There's the fades, I guess, that exist right now.
Take a look at it. Someone in
we can see. I think it's plus money.
Someone in the TikTok. Couple people have asked, "What's the max without Lando?" It's a category that's available that we're going to take advantage of. It's without Lando Norris. Just a quick reset here, Mike. It basically, everyone finishes the race. You take Lando out of the finishing positions, and then everyone moves up or down accordingly. So we're saying we like Max. When you remove Lando from this race, Lando can win. But then if Max is P2, this bet would win because you just take Lando out of the bet. If Lando finishes third and Max wins, well, then Max wins because you still take Lando out and he's still first. That's what that means. And we like it when it's available. For 2 years, the category's been without Verstappen. And this is the first time we've seen without someone else. Okay, we wanted to go combination podium.
Can you look at combo podium?
Okay. I'm gonna fight myself from being just no. There's no bad ideas. We're brainstorming here. I could see George being on this podium.
It's okay. No, I could see he's starting on pole. He could definitely be on podium.
Like this could just be Lando and Max go through, and George is still on podium. And then I could also see George making a mistake and losing his suspension, and then Lewis inherits the podium. I could also see Piastri maybe coming through and get like.
That's what I think. I think all of those things, like, again, this is I think a symptom of the fact that he is the one out there of those 5 cars that are from P1 to P5 that looks like he has the lowest downforce package. I think that's going to be a problem. It's great that it worked out for him in qualifying over 1 lap, and it did have to, again, a lot of unique conditions had to conspire for that to happen, but he still did it. He still put on a great Q3 final run and got pole. But this is where I think the value exists behind him, is that it's unlikely over the course of the race stint that he's able to manage his tires in a way, especially with the changing conditions and the rain and all that allow him to maintain position over cars that are way faster than him. And Hamilton that has a higher downforce spec right now. So what do you see that's plus money? I would only look at a plus money one. Is there a George and a Max?
Lando
it's minus 110. It's like even money.
Lando and Max or George and Lando?
Well, if we take the without Lando, because we're assuming Max is going to win, then is the will George Russell and Max finish on the podium, is the no the cover for even money.
Okay, let's think. This is a thought exercise. Let's think about this. So Lando wins. So if it goes Lando, Max, George, we win the Max bet, we lose the Max and George. You're hinging on Lewis beats George, and I just don't know. I don't know.
Oscar could beat George, though. That's the thing. It's possible, because if you look, Oscar podium was like plus 200. Like Oscar podium finishes plus 200, so there's an acknowledgement that this guy from 5th can get on the podium. It's a lot. I'm not saying like it's a stretch. Minus 175 for Lewis and Max is another. We just went through this, right?
I know.
Was it 2 weeks ago? And we chose wrong, unfortunately.
I don't think it's wise to fade the Mercedes this week.
Okay, man, that's not, I have no problem with that.
They got good momentum.
That's okay. Yeah,
and if it does rain, that's gonna we can't bet on the weather, but if it does rain, that's going to help the Merc. It's not going to hurt the Merc.
Why do you think that though? I think that's not. I don't think that's correct at all.
Well, that's what
I think it's going to hurt them.
That's what they say. They say that the colder weather helps their.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, it might not make them better than the Red Bull, but it helps their performance more than it helps the other team's performance.
I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think it helps track. It's just track position, I think, is the end. Like what weather will help. Remember in Montreal, you couldn't deviate from the racing line, so it's difficult to overtake. I think that's what happens if it rains heavily.
I don't think the Mercs are there if it wasn't wet all weekend in Montreal. If it was a dry weekend, they're not even there to get in the way. I think the colder temperatures suit the Mercedes.
But we still watched in Montreal that they got those colder temperatures and the rain throughout the entire race, and George was just swimming out there.
Yeah.
Like he had to do everything he could, and literally Lando and Max relatively easily, let's be honest. I mean, George kept coming back, give him a ton of credit. He almost killed himself a couple of times. He was fighting as hard as he could for that P3. Okay. And what happened? He just lost his tires at the end. I mean, this is a different, like that's a lower tire stress track. This is a guy who killed his tires in Canada. What about Silverstone.
You made a
Like,
good point there. You didn't actually make it. Well, make it on your behalf because you danced around it for so long.
what
It
is
was
that?
the changing conditions. It was the drying track where everyone was trying to stretch out their inters. And then, yes, George and Oscar suck on managing their tires. So when it became, hey, you got to take care of these inters, George lost the race. So that.
What do you think's going to happen in this race?
Hey, George
Why
is
would
probably
he
gonna lose
not?
his
And he's
tires.
not. He doesn't even have a configuration to help him out.
I
He's at a
don't.
disadvantage.
I don't love fading the Mercedes this week. I got to be honest
Okay,
with
that's
you.
fine. We don't have to. I think
think
there's
there's
other
ways
things that we can
around
do.
it.
I'm not saying we have to do it. Yeah, we don't have to do that. I'm completely fine with it. I'm just saying, like, it's hard to fade the guy who has track position. I understand that completely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, if you look basically at how they've set up their cars and what we expect today, he's at a disadvantage, even though he's on. He could have wheel spin coming off the line, and these other guys have a little bit more downforce going into turn one, and that might be
He's
the
pretty good
difference
at
maker.
starting though.
Lewis with a little bit.
I
He's good.
don't
Yeah, no,
like.
I'm
I
not saying.
rate George as
Yeah,
an off the grid. Like Lando struggles. George seems
yeah,
he starts well.
yeah. That's fine. Okay,
Dude, there's a
he
chance.
could
Like
lose it into.
Max got floor damage. Max is on row 2. Like Max could lead this race coming out of turn 1. He's not. It's not
I
like
know
he's in the
he's
middle
insane.
of the
He's
grid.
he's
on the
a
second row.
psychopath. You could easily. I
He's
know
on
he
the
could
second
easily.
row.
I know. I was looking at like Max to lead after lap 10. Like he gets that if he has the high downforce setup. Once he gets DRS, we know that the advantage is enormous. Him leading after lap 10 is like plus 400 or something. Like he could be leading after lap 1, dude.
Is it that
It's
high?
possible. Yeah, it's crazy. But we don't need to. There's other
No, you brought
places
it
to
up.
find value. I don't
No,
think
you
we need
brought
to
it
look at
up.
that.
We got to show the people.
Yeah, look at it.
Plus 400, lap 10.
Yeah, it's like he could be now. Okay, there's actually no point in taking that because there are 3 good cars ahead of him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He doesn't have a
Yes.
bunch of scrubs in front of him, so it doesn't actually make sense to take that. But
I think that is why I'm struggling fading the Mercedes from actually falling off the podium completely. I think one of them ends up there, and I don't want to be wrong flipping the coin between the Mercs again. I get it. We would pick George to not be there because of the setup and because Lewis and because of this and because of that, and then at the end of the day, robot George Russell is going to be up on the podium. Like it just is what it is. That's what he does.
if that's what you think, then I'm okay with it. So like let's go look at some
Okay.
team bets then, okay?
Bring me somewhere else.
So
Team bets.
let's look at the race match bets because you just briefly went to it, but
We went
let's,
here to
like,
reference
look
value
through it and
earlier.
see what we think here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What did I like? McLaren, Red Bull. Okay, so you don't want to pick between the Mercedes and the McLaren, so we don't have to do that. I had that one as plus 150. I don't think so you don't like that one. That's okay. Okay, do you want to go to most team points? Do you want to look at most team points? McLaren at plus 130.
Now again, we're picking between McLaren and Mercedes on this bet, but let's explore it.
Yeah.
Let's explore it.
Let's just look.
Let's explore it. Mercedes is the favorite, of course. They start P1, P2.
1 and 2. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. This is big. This is an Oscar Piastri bet essentially, right?
It kind of is. But
You don't-
he
you don't-
doesn't have to
you don't
pass
wanna do
both
it.
of them.
He doesn't have to pass both of them. No.
They kind of need to end up as a sandwich. He would need to get one. So let's say worst case, it's so
His 2 and 5 beat 3 and
that's
4.
what I'm thinking. 2 and 5.
Yeah.
So 2 is 18, and then the Mercs would get 15 and 10, 25, and then 8 and 15 is 23. So the Mercs would win that.
The sandwich is better. Okay.
You'd have to get them McLaren, Merc. I don't know if Oscar goes and gets Lewis or Oscar. I don't know.
It's probably not worth it then. Okay. Okay. Let's look at both cars' points finish.
You're bringing me to a both cars bet?
Oh, it's not a street track. It's okay. Everything's fine.
Who would you be looking at here? Ferrari?
Oh, it's
they're minus 600.
buddy Aston Martin. Look at Aston Martin.
Plus one, yeah, plus
So
money.
okay, let me say this about Aston Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Home race for them.
Mm-hmm.
They brought upgrades to the car. We've been chirping them hard because they haven't been working. But Lance Stroll said something after qualifying yesterday for the first time in like literally I feel like months that gave me a lot of encouragement. And I think it's reflected in the fact that he was able to put it into P8. But he said the car feels good to drive. The guy, like both of those guys, they have said that the car has felt like shit for literally, I don't know, like 7 Grand Prix in a row.
Does Lance
And
know
for the
what
first
a car
time-
feels like when it's good?
well, if he can put it into, so he put it into P8 and Alonso's in P10, and they actually both of their Q3 runs were fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
So Alonso got, I don't know what was happening at the back there with Piastri. They had a bunch of traffic. They all screwed up their runs. The fact that they do that every Grand Prix is so stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody's just waiting to try to get the last run, and they just fuck each other up. So Alonso starting at P10, like I would argue that they might have had the pace to finish at least ahead of Albon, maybe closer to Sainz. Stroll got to P8, and he also had, I think he had to abandon his final flying lap. So the car actually probably could have qualified a little bit better. In terms of their projected race pace, they look like, they're not going to finish ahead of the Ferraris. That's fine. Like if Leclerc gets in there, but they should be able to get Alex Albon out of P9. Like Alonso should be able to pass Albon. I don't think Albon is realistically a threat. The Williams is not a threat, I don't think, for the Aston Martin on this weekend.
There's
a
also
comfortable
up there.
car for them to drive. I don't think
I'm saying, like,
Hulkenberg's going to fall out of the points, but they could.
They could. Like it might be the second Aston battling with Hulk for that last points position. Like
I would say I don't think it's I don't think that it's contingent on that though. I just don't know. So if Leclerc comes in, and we talked about Albon, like we like the fact that he's in that group, that I don't like Albon to finish in the points. I think P11 is a more realistic spot for him in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But if Leclerc's coming in and Alonso stays in, who else is coming? You know, if something happens at the top, then they inherit the positions, which is great too. But who else is coming in? Like, there's no threat to come into the points and kick them out other than Leclerc, because Checo's now starting from the pit lane.
Mm-hmm. And both Alpines, who have been in the points recently,
both Alpines are not. They're not going to be a factor.
I like this. I'm in my head. I'm already starting to debate. Do I like this better than Magnussen's group? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It's a 2-car bet, and it's a midfield bet.
It's Silverstone, yeah. It's not a street track. Like we don't have to be scared.
No. It's a big wide track. There's runoff areas. I mean, again, I know that there's a lot of safety cars, high percentage chance of safety cars, that type of thing. But right, this is a plus money bet.
Zach on YouTube clarified my math. Apparently, I'm gonna trust what Zach says. If McLaren was second in that sandwich, McLaren would have more. I don't know if that. I still don't think I want to pick between McLaren and Mercedes, but that would be Lando, then both Mercs, then Oscar.
No, I know you don't want to.
Yeah. Plus 130. I don't know. Does that make it?
What math did you do in your head? I thought you were a math guy.
I did on the fly.
No, I don't think it's going to change anything realistically.
28 and 10. He's right. I just redid it in my head.
Great. Yeah.
I just don't.
It's not like a fastest lap changes that. Where do we at?
The fastest lap would make that even, and then
we won't. So you would rather entertain this? Okay.
Oh, I don't know actually. So a McLaren, 2 Mercedes with fastest lap, and then another McLaren would be tied at 28 points, but then you get the win because you had the higher finishing position. So it's a bet on Lando,
right,
to go get both Mercedes. And if Oscar gets it, great, you win. If Oscar doesn't get it, he's got to be right up on their gearbox. And that assumes Max wins. If Lando wins, then you're laughing as long as Oscar doesn't fall off the map. I mean, is that a way? Spent all show saying I don't want to pick between them. Is there just value in it? So we should? I don't know. You liked it. Is it still plus 130?
It's a what is the Mercedes?
It was most points we were looking at. Yeah, not matchup.
Yeah, but what is that? Sorry, what is that team match bet though?
McLaren's favored.
But that's just because Lando. They think Lando's going to finish ahead of them.
But that's a single driver ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mercedes, McLaren.
McLaren's not favored. They're plus 110. So you just get 28 points. You're just betting on Oscar Piastri. Those extra 28 points are just Piastri has to stay in P5 essentially.
Yeah.
Lando has to do what he's I guess like the odds makers think is going to happen, which is finish ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't think. I guess they don't finish. They don't think that. Like if the Mercedes, he's favored.
He finishes ahead of George, or they just think it's Max or Lando at the top. Like if you look at dual,
which is odd though. Well, if you just look at the race match bets, like McLaren is an underdog, right? They think Mercedes is going to finish ahead in terms of the team match bets, but then in terms of who they think is going to win the race, they think either Max or Lando's going to win the race. It's kind of confusing.
Yeah. Dual forecast, Max and Lando. I think we're better to take Max without Lando. Because
I like that bet.
if you take the dual
Yeah, I like that
forecast,
bet.
that's saying that Lando again goes and gets the Mercs, which he might.
Well,
Maybe I'm
okay,
being too
go
scared
back.
about it. I don't know.
No, no, no. We'll go back to the race match bets because Red Bull is a favorite over Mercedes, which is like the funniest thing of all time, if I
Hmm.
recall.
They are.
Right? Right?
Red
Red
Bull.
Bull at minus so just one Max Verstappen in fourth
Yeah.
is minus 175 favorite over the Mercedes.
Uh huh.
But then
Right, but we're getting
two
minus 105
McLarens.
for the same bet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's the best value that you can get there for sure.
Yeah.
Right? There's no better way to do it. No, that's the best way to make that bet. Definitely.
I don't think we need to force a McLaren versus Merc lean on this bet slip today.
Okay, no, it's fine. We don't have to
I
do
don't
that.
think we need to.
Okay. Well, we have quite a few that we've already talked about that I would be more than comfortable with. I think at this point.
Oh,
Is
the
there anything?
Aston. Let me
I
throw
got to
up.
look through all
Let me throw
my
up the
notes here.
Aston because I do like the Aston double points as a maybe.
Okay. Like it actually plus 125. Like who again? Though, who else is a threat though, other than Leclerc? Leclerc comes in. Albon goes out.
No, I mean the biggest risk is does Lance Stroll crash, but he's kind of been in form lately.
I remember reading an article. Motorsport wrote an article. One of the guys from Motorsport wrote an article like maybe a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about like Lance Stroll, and I think it was Yuki Tsunoda was the other driver in the rain, like in wet conditions. I think their relative pace compared to the field is significantly better than in dry conditions.
Who? Sorry,
And he was like, yeah, he was trying to dive into why that's the case.
but who?
And
I tuned out there.
oh, it was like I can't one of the motorsport writers. I can't remember
Which
exactly
driver
who
though?
it
Sorry,
was.
what team?
Oh, Lance
Okay,
Stroll and
sorry.
Sonoda,
Yeah,
both. It was talking about them, and it was talking about how their relative pace in the wet is better than their relative pace in the dry. And his theory behind it was that like because they have so many inputs all the time, like if you watch Lance Stroll's
yeah. Okay,
driver cam, he's just like moving his hands on the wheel a
this
lot.
actually makes
It's
a
one
lot
of
of
the reasons
sense.
why. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why he's at like such a high risk of it seems like crashing in the dry all the time. But he does. He has a high rate of input, and apparently his argument is that like that just allows the tires to stay in a better window for longer in cooler, wetter temperatures, and also increases mechanical grip because like there's more parts of the tire that are making contact with the track. I remember reading that, thinking like it kind of makes sense because you do see Lance Stroll starting in the wet. I mean, he tends to finish. He's just better in the wet weather
He's
for
always
whatever reason. And I think it's
which is
driving style.
such a misnomer because that's usually an indicator for a really good racing driver. They're good in the wet, and Lance has
Yeah.
always been good in the wet. And it's like, where's your talent then?
Is it just this high rate of input where he's just like snapping the wheel all around
I'd
and
extend
somehow
it
that just
that his
helps him in the
muscle
wet weather?
memory.
It's weird.
He's used to so many inputs, and then the wet when you're constantly have to correct yourself. He's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
just how I normally drive. Whereas someone
Yeah.
like George or something is like, I need to put one perfect input and hold the whole apex that way, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It makes me feel better about this bet just having thought about that as a concept. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting because I think that statistically it's there. The empirical data suggests that is true.
Mm-hmm.
And so then does Alonso maintain a point scoring position? I think he has the machinery to do it this week. I really do.
I like the value on it.
I just like the fact that they think the car isn't shit.
Is it? I guess yeah. It does. There's no problem with us taking a signs group that he's better than the Astons, but then also the Astons are in the points. I mean, are we too
Yeah,
involved on the Astons? No.
I don't think so, right? I mean that's like it's not too incestuous in a sense, right? But like one wins, I guess. Like if somebody's finishing ahead of Carlos Sainz, then that's probably better for our Aston bet theoretically.
I was
But
just yeah. They
there's
kind
room
of
there's
hedge each
enough room
other.
for them all.
Yeah,
Yeah, they kind of do in a little bit.
a little bit. Okay. 46 minutes. I mean, was there anything else you wanted to explore? I didn't have anything else written down. I mean, unless we try to pick, yeah, we don't want to pick exact podiums or anything like that today. Someone in which chat? The TikTok chat. I realize the screen minimizes every time I do that. That's too bad. Someone said race leaders. That's interesting just because we have George on the line. Counts as one.
Yeah. I think it's definitely minus money for 3.
Mm-hmm.
Minus 250. It's
That's
just, I can't.
terrible
It's
value.
going to be 3, and I just, you can't. Yeah, I can't buy that at
It's
minus
so
250.
hard to convince yourself to pick
Yeah.
the window of 2.
No,
And the
I
days
just
of
don't. And
Max
yeah.
Grand Slam are gone behind us now.
No. It's just too short.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like the bet. Obviously, I think it's probably, unless there's crazy safety cars that happen, I can't see it not coming through as three race leaders, right?
George doesn't go wire to wire in this race. Even if he wins, it's not wire to wire. Like, it's not a Grand Slam for George. So you're getting 2 leaders at some point because he counts off the line.
There's so much. Yeah, there's the strategy. I mean, you don't really get a lot of bang on one stoppers. That looks like for sure that's what it is. But there's so much. I think all 3 compounds look like they're in play. Guys are going to be starting on the softs. Guys are going to be starting on the mediums. Maybe on the hards. I don't know. Checo last pit stop. Do you
I
want
was
to
just
take a
going to
look at
say,
that?
I always throw it out there, but then Checo
You know
never
what?
actually does it. He starts on like the softs and then goes 2 softs before everyone else pits.
But like like the guy starting in the pit lane. It wouldn't be crazy if he just went hard soft. Like that would be. Come on, the guy's got to do it at some point. I know.
We're not doing last. Someone
I know we're not
Mike.
doing last pit stop. Yeah, we're not doing last pit stop. That's fine. But I guarantee that him and Max, well, they usually are the favorites. But
who has value? Is this? Does lead a lap off the line doesn't count? That counts as a leader, but he hasn't led a lap. Like, is this just? This isn't guaranteed
this is
win
100%.
because George is on the line.
No. He has to lead a lap. He has to lead the first lap. I think. Yeah, he has to go from the starting line to the starting line.
Yeah, this
lap
just says this is showing you all 3 teams are going to lead a lap.
Yeah, it's 3 or more race leaders, right?
Ferrari's maybe too far back. Plus 800 is wild for them to just like have a lap where they lead.
Nah, they can't. There's too many. The split strategies for both Mercedes and McLaren are going to cover off any window. Hulkenberg?
What about Hulkenberg? Hulkenberg plus 1800.
He's just like less than Aston Martin somehow. That's kind of crazy, actually.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else
that
we looked?
I had no. I think the Aston Martin was the last one that I had to lean on that I wanted to take a look at. We don't, like, I had Piastri finishing on the podium. Piastri finished 3rd. We don't need to take those swings because, like you said, you don't really want to pick between the McLaren and the Mercedes. It's fine. We don't need to do it.
I think those are swings, and people on all everywhere they'd say, "Hey, they were right, but it's a swing, and we don't need to take swings here. We're here to make returns."
I'm fine with that. I mean, I think we have. Do we like those 3? Do we like Carlos? Do we like Aston Martin? Do we like without Lando? Is that the 3?
Do we want to put a 4th one on?
I mean, ideally, I like the
Martin
3
instead of the Albon.
Instead of the Albon, yeah, I don't. I would kill the minus 200 on the Albon. I wouldn't.
Yeah, the value's the worst.
Just because it's the worst, and
then we kill the Magnussen.
I like the bet.
So we've got both Aston in the points at plus 125, Verstappen without Norris at minus 105, and then Sainz Group 2 at minus 163.
Yeah. Okay. Like if you're. Are you the Aston Martin is the one that I think is the biggest debate. We like both of us immediately gravitated toward the without Lando and the Carlos Sainz group bet. I mean, the Carlos Sainz group bet, it seems like, come on, give the guy some credit. Like he's not trash. He's not as good as Leclerc, but he's not trash.
No, I think I like all of these. The biggest thing for the Aston for me is Checo's out of the way and the Alpines are out of the way. Even though I hate on the Alpines all the time, they've been in the points recently, and those are the 3 drivers that could have taken points away from like Alonso. I think they're just going to inherit it. They're there.
I mean, I remember. I think it was FP2. Alonso at one point was at the top of the timesheets. He just said also, I think, that the wet weather conditions have been a bit more friendly to us this season. He just said that. Like he just admitted it. We know that Lance apparently is just better in the wet, and it seems like their car, for whatever reason, seems to do a little bit better in the wet weather too. Again, the fact that Lance said the car doesn't. He didn't say that. It feels like he feels comfortable in the car. That's a good thing.
That's a great
for
thing.
sure.
They both start in the points. There's 2 cars in the points that I would suggest they should be ahead of. Hulkenberg,
Yeah.
maybe Hulkenberg, Albon for
Now,
sure. Then
Albon for sure.
So 2 cars that they're already in the points. They don't need anyone to come out, but 2 cars could come out of the points. The risk of cars coming in is only Leclerc. So you got 2 that can come out, 1 that likely comes in. They probably finish 8 and 9 even.
I think like this is getting ahead of the curve on Aston Martin. The fact that they're plus money, they're in the points, and they're plus money. Think about that though. Like at the beginning of the season, or even for the first 2 or 3 races, this is like a minus 200 bet.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a minus 250 bet. They start in the points, and it's Aston Martin. They were fighting for podiums, right? Like that. They had that aura still about them, and yeah, they've lost their way completely with developments. But it's conceivable that they've figured it out, or at the very least, have given these guys a car this week that they're comfortable driving, which would be great. I think both of them are capable of staying in the top 10.
I like it. Let's start talking value. Let me fix up the little text here. So we're off. We're off this one. Ooh, that is a small window to scroll inside. No Albon. This is crazy. There we go. Yeah, give me way more room.
Changes we made to the car after Austria have been beneficial and seem to have made the car easier to drive. Lance Stroll after qualifying.
I like it. We're on him.
So I'm going to bring up my Bet365 app here.
While you do that, let me talk to people about signupexpert.com and BetStamp. We are partnered with BetStamp and signupexpert.com. It's a great website. We have a link in wherever you're watching this. If it's in the bios on certain apps, if you're on maybe a horizontal app, we've got it in the description down below. Signupexpert.com/F1000. If you want to bet along with us, it's a website that can help you sign up for all of the available sportsbooks in your area. A lot of them offer first time sign up bonuses, first bet bonuses, and Sign Up Expert makes it very easy for you to capitalize on all those, and then also bet along with our favorite sportsbooks, which are ranked on our website. Check us out. We appreciate you. It really helps the program here. And of course, like and subscribe. If you've made it this long through the show and you've enjoyed it, it really helps us if you leave a like and follow and subscribe. Let's talk money, Mike. Let's talk money. Is it just, do we start with an even third? Or do you have a gut somewhere?
I've been fine with that. I do like, Carlos is the shortest, and I probably do feel the most confident in it. Max, and then I'm just firing them into the slip here. Both cars on the points finish. Plus 120 for Aston Martin now. It's losing some value, so let's get on it.
Well, okay. We should have a rule in here that if you're going to be betting along with us, you let us get the value first.
Yeah. Come on.
You guys are moving the lines on us. We're doing this live here. Come on.
Yeah. Give me a break.
There should be an unspoken agreement here.
Yeah. 333. I mean, I actually don't mind that. Just looking at it. So there really isn't anything, like we talked about Carlos Sainz and Aston Martin. I think there's a bit of cover there, but it's not like we need to do the math and figure out if this one wins and this one loses. Like we've kind of got a good spread.
It's not like the
actually, I do like that. I like having.
Well, I think the big thing is if Carlos has a terrible moment and he's not where we need him to be in his group, it inherently kind of gives the Aston some points positions.
That actually the 3-3, like the just splitting it 3 ways is probably the best way to do it then.
The lines
with
are
Carlos
so close
being the
to each other
shortest, right?
too. Like we're
minus 163 to plus 120.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'm 334 on Carlos and then 333 on Max. Yeah, he gets that extra $1, right? Minus 163 for Carlos Sainz to win the group at 334 on it. Max Verstappen without Lando Norris at 333. So 540 is the payout for Carlos. 650 is the payout for Verstappen. And then 732 is the payout for Aston Martin.
Let's have a day. Let's get back.
Good.
I'm good with it. Horse.
Yeah. buddy, let's get hot again. We were hot. We're not right now.
Okay,
We're
well,
already down.
when we're halfway through this
Already
race,
down a hot picks.
when we're halfway through this race and everyone's in the position that we need them in with 10-second gaps
know.
ahead, and maybe, hey, Red Bull, maybe don't keep Max in the pits for 8 seconds. You know, let's
Jesus Christ.
If we build the gaps that we think we're gonna build, let's just keep them. Let's do that. Let's try that. This has been a lot of fun.
Locked in, buddy.
Thank you for tuning in. No race next week. We will be back in Hungary in